All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Kati Course, brought to you by UCR Kati Punan. My name is Brandon Nguyen. I'm the academics chairperson for this year, and our topic today is on staying focused. So raise your hand if you feel like you get easily distracted, like studying and lecture. Anything else? Mark's got 2 hands. Cool. Yeah. So what are like some things that distract y'all? Like just like show of hands. Phone, always a phone. And like sometimes it's like websites or like apps or things like that. Yes, Mark Vincent.
I get really tired, so sometimes I nap.
Yeah, I get you. So like throughout the presentation, we're gonna go over like how to handle distractions like phones, like websites, and kind of like managing your energy and motivation and that type of thing. So by the end of the presentation, we'll get all that out of the way. All right, so just like a quick rundown. So first we're gonna go over like the different types of distractions, right? There's actually 2 main types of distractions. And then after that, we're gonna learn how to handle these distractions, like manage them and eliminate them from our environment. Next, it's gonna be how to focus during lecture, which is I know a big one for a lot of us, and how to focus when you're studying. So those are kind of like the big 2, especially as we're approaching the end of the quarter. So that'll be what we're going over. All right, so distractions, we already said what distracts you, right? And so a lot of you said things like phones. That's probably like the biggest distractor. Oops, okay, yes. So like I said, there are 2 main types of distractions here. And so like all of you said, there are things like external distractions, right? And so what are external distractions? They're things that occur outside of you, right? So it's things like text notifications, like a loud environment, people come bothering you. Those are all examples of external distractions. And so this is usually, like this category is usually what people think about when we talk about distractions. They usually think about external distractions. But even if you don't really get distracted by, text or anything like that, have you ever felt like you're doing your work and then all of a sudden something comes to your mind like, shoot, I gotta fold my laundry, or like, oh, what am I gonna eat for dinner? Things like that. Has anyone like any thoughts like ever crossed their mind? Yes. So that's an example of an internal distraction. And so internal distractions are things that are within you, and it's things that you worry about or things that you think about. All right. And so like I said, it's thinking about folding laundry, worrying about dinner, and even like if you're studying for like math, you might even think about things like for your science class, right? So these are things under the internal distractions. All right, and then so this is the next part. So now we know like the main categories of distractions, and now we're gonna learn how to tackle both the external and the internal distractions. All right, so for handling external distractions, the first thing is removing the distractions, right? So there's phones and there's laptops and things like that. And for the phone, I don't know, has anyone ever heard of the app called Flora? Anyone? Yes. So basically, if you don't know what Flora is, anyone? Carla, Ian, would you like to explain what Flora is?
Well, I haven't used it in a while, but it's like when you can designate a certain amount of time, like maybe 30 minutes, where you can't be on your phone. And basically, the longer you're not on your phone, the more your tree grows. And if you like stop and like actually go on your phone, then it dies.
Yeah.
It's like a way to like stay focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a way to punish yourself. So you'll plant this seed and you get to set the amount of time. So you could do like 30 minutes, you could do like an hour, and you'll set that timer. And for that hour, if you try to touch your phone and go into another app, it'll just kill your tree. And so that's a way you can stay out of that. So I used to use that for phone distractions, but recently I started using like Apple's focus mode. So if y'all want to go ahead and look at your phone, if you like swipe down and you get to like this menu, you'll see there's either a focus button or like a do not disturb. That's usually what I use, and that's if you use an Apple iPhone, but other phones also have do not disturb. So I've been using that to stop like vibrations from pulling away my attention. And so those usually work, but if you're especially prone to like if you're especially prone to just picking up your phone, like even like if you don't get a notification, you're like, oh, let me go see ahead what this phone is doing, you know? There's like a saying, right? It's out of sight, out of mind. And so for me, like even if I have my phone face down, it's on focus mode, I'll see it and I'll just really want to check it just for like no reason, right? And so what I do is like, I'll have it, like I don't even want to feel it. So I don't put it in my pocket, but I would put it like in like my backpack or something, or like I'll put it in a drawer or like under my pillow, somewhere where I can't see it. And you could even put it like in a different room. And so that's probably the most effective way to handle like phone distractions, just having it out of sight, out of mind, because you just won't even think about it, right? Because once you get into the work phase, then you're kind of just focused on that. And then for your PC, like I'm like so guilty of this. Like it's more of my PC than my phone that distracts me. So like when I was working before, like I used to always just go on YouTube and I watch like cooking videos and I watch like Gordon Ramsay videos and like all these like movie clips and stuff like that on YouTube. Until I found a Chrome extension called Block Site. And so if you don't know what a Chrome extension is, it's basically something you can use on Google Chrome, and you add it to your browser and it can help you do a lot of different things. And for this one, it blocks websites. But the cool thing about Block Site is that you got to set a timer on that too. So it's kind of like Flora in a sense, where you can set a timer for like, let's say 30 minutes. I'm gonna do some like hard focusing, and so I'm gonna cut myself off of like these websites for 30 minutes. And so that's like what I use to stay off of like YouTube, Facebook, and things like that. All right, and then so for this next one, who here like loves multitasking? Like you try to do like multiple things at the same time to try to, okay, cool. I see a lot of shakes, some nods, but I hate to break it to you, but multitasking actually isn't real. It might feel like you're trying to do multiple tasks at the same time, but the way the brain works is it's like a TV, right? And so it has different channels. And so like imagine you're on like channel 1 or something, you're focusing on something. If you're gonna focus on like your homework and then all of a sudden you're gonna focus on like a show that's going on, you're switching channels. You can't have multiple channels on at the same time, right? You have to completely switch over. And so that's how our brain works. And some people are just better at switching between channels, but you can never really be doing two complex things at the same time. And so yeah, you can only tune into one at a time. And there's gonna be a video after this slide that kind of shows you what our brain does. And as for music choice, or how about this? How many people listen to music when they study? A lot of people. So for me, sometimes I like to focus in like silence. Like if I really need to focus and like the house is quiet, then I just try to go in pure silence. But sometimes if it's like loud or noisy, then I have to turn on some music. And so for those of you that listen to music, raise your hand if they have lyrics. About half, a lot, no. Okay, yeah, so lyrics, actually, you probably know this already, but you kind of do it anyways, but lyrics can distract you a lot, right? Because there's words and you start to think about these words and you start to even sing them sometimes in your head. And so any little thing like that can pull away from your attention and can make you lose focus. And so usually we recommend no lyrics. And so that's why people listen to things like lo-fi. Recently I got into something called binaural beats. I could play some of it. Let me play an example of binaural beats right now. Let's see. So usually like music like this you would listen to with headphones, and basically it plays like one note into this ear and one note into the other ear, and it can basically train your brain to jump into different states of focus. So like for this one, there's like, this one says binaural beats for focus, right? But there's binaural beats for like memory, binaural beats for sleeping, and so there's things like that can actually, like there's been studies done that show that it can actually shift your brain into different states of like alertness. So that's that. And then the next point I'll show you real quick is nature sounds, right? And so like sometimes like for me, if you're like me and you kind of like the vibe of studying outside, but like I'm inside, I have my PC, so I can't really go outside. There's things like ambient sounds, so like it's like sounds like this, like calming type thing. So that's an option also if you're not into lo-fi, you're not into binaural beats. This is like another lyricless option. Yeah. So that's that. Oh, I'm gonna have to click through all this. Yes, and so that's what I would recommend for music choice. Basically, at the end of the day, no lyrics if you're trying to do like some like really deep focus. But if it's something that's like super easy, super chill, then you could probably deal with lyrics. But if it's something you really need to focus, no lyrics is probably the best. So here's a little video I had on multitasking. And so like just a disclaimer, this video was originally made, this TED Talk was originally made in the context of distracted driving. So I'll just play a couple seconds from this video.
Our brain is not wired to pay attention to more than one complex task at a time. What we're actually doing when we think we're multitasking is quickly shifting our focus from one activity to another. So while our mind is engaged in planning,
right, and so as you probably saw, like, right, he's trying to like close all these boxes at the same time, but you can never be closing like 2 boxes at the same time, right? You have to close one box and then you have to run over, close the other box. So you're really just switching channels and you're switching your focus. And so that's really kind of like what your brain is doing. It's never doing like 2 things like that at the same time. All right, so those were external distractions. And so how about internal distractions, right? How about the things that just pop into our mind and then we're just like, okay, I'll do the laundry later, and then you'll either forget to do the laundry or it'll stay in your mind so much that it distracts you from what you're doing, right? That's usually what happens. And so what I do, this is like probably like one of my biggest like hacks in like my focus, is I have a sticky note and like I just rip out a new sticky note each time and I make something called a distraction list. So I'll be working and if something comes to my mind like, oh, like I don't have a dog, but let's say it's like, oh, I gotta walk the dog. And so instead of me just like thinking about it, okay, I'll remember it later, I'll just take a second, jot it down on the distraction list, and it's out of my mind and it's not going to be distracting me anymore. And so like I said, some of the benefits are it frees up your memory, right? You don't have to be like, okay, I'll remember this, because if you're trying to remember it while you're studying, your focus isn't on studying anymore, it's focused on remembering that. So it'll free up your memory and it'll also remove the distraction from your mind. So I would say go ahead and try this sometime. Next time you're trying to focus, go ahead and just get like a piece of paper or like a sticky note or something, and I'll just like be sitting here and I'll just have it, I put it here on the side and I have a pen and I'll be focusing, I'll be studying, and then if something comes to my mind, I'll just jot it down. It's out of my mind. I'm not going to forget it because it's on the paper now, and then I can get back to work. So that's how I use that. So I highly recommend trying that sometime and see how that works for you. But yeah, that's how you handle the external distractions, and that's how you handle the internal distractions. All right, and so that was just like kind of like a brief introduction into kind of like the general ways you can handle those types of things. But now let's go into specifics, right? Focusing during lecture. Who here sometimes has trouble during focusing like on a lecture, right? Is it like online, in person? Chris, what do you think? Is it online or in person?
It's definitely harder online.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. Like all my lectures this quarter are all online, and I feel it. Like it's just so easy to kind of just like sit there, take notes, and kind of just like move that window off to the side and do other things. And so it's a lot easier to get distracted online. And so a lot of these strategies, and since we're returning to like 95% in person next quarter, these will also apply to in-person classes. All right, so here's going to be a few tips to help you. And like I said, some of these are tailored to in-person classes, which most of you will have next quarter. I don't know how many of you will like this, but the first tip is sitting in the professor's view. Like you don't got to be like right up in here, right? Like you don't have to be in the first row, but maybe like even like maybe even like the whole image is like cut off, but like it basically goes like all the way back there, right? But like you could kind of be like, I don't know, like in this kind of area, like where they can see you basically. And so this actually helps. Why does this help? Well, it holds you accountable. Because, right, like when you're in lecture, if you're sitting in the very back of the class, what's like the first thing you do when you start losing focus? You whip out your phone and you start like showing your friends videos and stuff like that. But if you're in their eyesight, then it's going to be like a lot less likely that you're going to do that if they're like watching you, you know. So it'll hold you accountable. And there's also been studies done on this where they compare like how students do that sit in the back versus how students do that sit like in the front-ish area, and they find that the people that sit more towards like the professor do a lot better than the people that are in the back, and it all just comes down to focus. All right, and this next one, let me take a sip of water real quick. All right, and so this next one is actively taking notes, right? And so what do I mean by actively taking notes? It's like jotting down important points or questions you have, right? So important points, like if your professor says, this is gonna be important, this is gonna be on the test, like that's something I'm gonna put a star, I'm gonna highlight, circle it. That's something I'm gonna take note of. If I have a question, I'm gonna write that down like in the margin or something. And so like just by doing something, I have my focus towards the lecture and not just like sitting there, you know. So that's one thing. And also, back to my research, handwritten notes are best compared to like typing or like screenshotting. Like in Zoom school, I used to be like the screenshotter because I was like, I'll just screenshot it, paste it into a doc, and it's there forever, you know. But this research has shown that handwritten is best. Just a show of hands, who here like types their notes? Types. What about handwritten? Any screenshotters? Right, so it's a good mix of everything, but the research does show that handwritten is best. So if you have like an iPad, what I do is like I download the slides and I'll go ahead and annotate on the slides, right? Or you can print out the slides and you could write on it if you don't have an iPad. But basically the research shows that handwritten is best. And so for the people that type, how come you type your notes? What's the advantage to type? Or like I guess to anyone, what's the advantage to typing over writing? Yes?
You type a lot faster than you write.
Right, so you type a lot faster than you write. So how could that help you in lecture?
So that helps you in a way where you get to write or type everything down that the professor says.
Right, so you're able to type fast, so you're able to get all the information down, right? And so in a lot of these classes, usually they post the slides, right? So all the info is there online for you. And so the problem with you typing faster is that when you write you're slow, but you can only have the amount of time to write down fewer points, right? And so what that forces you to do is it keeps you to the point. And so the idea is that you have to consciously think about, okay, is this important enough to write because I don't have a lot of time? And so when you're on that time crunch, you have to choose, should I put this in my notes? And the way you decide that is it important, right? So it helps you stay to the point, and this will help you stay focused, right? Because you're always thinking about, is this important? Is this important? Is this important? And so that's why the studies show that handwritten is best. And so I just wanted to talk quickly about like screenshotting. Like I know how satisfying it can be to screenshot, but it kind of gives you this false sense of security because you'll screenshot it or you'll take a picture of it, and then that gives you a lot of time to kind of just like chill, right? So when you're chilling, then that's when the distractions happen, right? And so the taking notes will help keep your brain engaged and reduce boredom. All right, so here's a couple more tips. asking and answering questions. I know it can be like scary, especially when you're like in a 200-300 person lecture, but if you're kind of like sitting near the professor, you can kind of just be like, hey, like, could you repeat that again? Then they'll repeat it. You know, you don't have to ask it in front of everyone, but it'll save you a lot of confusion later if you ask the question there instead of having to like Google it or something, but that's another thing that'll help. All right, and then this is kind of overlapping with external distractions we talked about earlier, but basically reducing other distractions like having your phone on airplane mode or focus mode, or like closing distracting apps and sites like on your laptop. All right, and so keep having these in mind. Are there any of these you use to stay focused during lecture? What do y'all use to stay focused? Anything? Is there anything outside of this that helps you? Show of hands. Yes, Miss Carla.
For online, sometimes I turn on my camera so that they can see me. Because there's not a lot of things to turn on, and my professors like to see. So it helps me like not want to be on my phone.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like that's basically kind of goes back to.
The online version.
Yeah, it's like the online version of sitting in the professor's eye line, right? Because it's for the same reason too. Because if the professor can see you, you're less likely to like be talking to your friends or being on your phone because they can see you, right? And so that's a good one. Good one. Cool. I don't know. I do that. All right, and so for the last point here, this is going to be focusing while studying, right? And so this is probably the most common time to get distracted, right? Because we study so much, and that means there's so many other opportunities for these distractions to come in. Okay, and so why do you get distracted while studying? Anyone? And like obviously this is going to overlap with you know, what we talked about earlier, but if anyone has anything else that's different, right? And so like it could be because of like the internal and the external distractions, right? That basically covers everything, but it could also be because of the way you're studying, right? And so one of the common things that people do, right, is these passive forms of studying. So things like just like sitting there in their chair, rereading notes, rewatching entire lectures, like with not really a goal. They're kind of just redoing it, hoping that it stays in their brain. And so those examples aren't really studying, right? Because it's really passive. You're not really engaging with the material at all. So the alternative is doing active forms of studying, such as taking notes. So instead of just reading the notes, what if you're reading the notes and kind of annotating in a column like, oh, I remember they said this is going to be important, things like that. That's even more engaging than just rereading. Let's see. And then making condensed summary sheets. So you can see like right here on the right, these are kind of just examples of summary notes. They don't have to be like this pretty and everything, but it's for the same reason that handwritten notes are better than typed notes, because when you're making condensed summary sheets, when you're limiting yourself to just one page, you have to make these decisions on what's important enough to put on this page. And so when you have to know what's important enough, that's when you really start thinking about the material and knowing what you should know. And so that's why more thinking leads to more focus. All right, same thing. And then obviously doing things like practice questions and flashcards is a lot more engaging than just rereading stuff. All right. And so some of these are like ways that you actually study, but sometimes it's just like, for anyone else, isn't it just like motivation sometimes that can like kick in, like, or like you get tired and you're just like, I just don't want to study anymore. Like even that counts as a distraction, right? Oops. And then so for that, right, so here's some tips for increasing your motivation, right? And it's kind of like a step-by-step thing. So part one is to set specific and realistic goals, right? And so what I mean by specific and realistic, let's go ahead and look at an example. So basically, like, let's say a bad example is like, let's say you're like, okay, I'm just gonna review 5 lectures today, or let's just say I'm gonna review 5 lectures, right? Like, that's like kind of a scary task, right? Like, it's a really big task, and the odds of you wanting to do that are pretty low, right? And it's not specific. It's not saying like when you're gonna do it or how you're gonna do it. And so, like I said, attainable goals are gonna help you feel more accomplished, right? So if you break it up into being like, okay, I'm gonna do 1 lecture today, I'm gonna do 1 lecture tomorrow, then that'll help you feel more accomplished. And so an example, instead of being like, okay, I'm gonna review this lecture, you could be like, I'm gonna write condensed notes for lecture 12, right? It's specific because it's saying, you're saying how you're gonna review them, right? And you're also making it realistic because it's just 1 lecture. Are we good on the camera? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, cool. And then next, and so after you set these goals, right, these are like all done before you're studying, right? You're setting these goals before your study session. And then you also want to plan rewards. And so this is something that not a lot of people do, right? Because why do we lose motivation when we study? Well, it's because a lot of people, when you ask them why are they studying, it's just to get a good grade in the class, right? And that's usually about all there is for it. But if you set rewards for yourself, like, what's an example? What do you all like to do, like, in your free time? Yes.
I like to gym.
Gym, yes. There's gym, you could watch Netflix, you could play video games, you could hang out with friends. There's a lot of things that you can do in your free time. And so if you set things like that as your reward, like let's say after this study session, I'm gonna get to go to the gym, or I'm gonna watch an episode of, You, or something like that. So planning rewards like that will keep you motivated throughout your study session because you know the reward is coming. Right? And so this kind of goes off of something I like to call work hard to play hard, right? Full send. And so, so let's start with play hard, right? So if you set your reward, right? Let's say my reward is going to be watching like an episode of Netflix or something, right? Like for 30 minutes. For all 30 of those minutes, like I'm gonna spend like every minute enjoying it, right? I'm not gonna think about school. I'm gonna invite friends over if I want to. I'm gonna eat like dinner while I'm doing it, right? I'm just full sending it because I know that if I set like a really, if I set like a really good reward for myself in the end, and I know I'm gonna get to have fun in that play phase, then I know that during my work phase, I'm gonna work a lot harder to get to that reward. So that's what it means by like work hard to play hard. Because I know that I'm gonna enjoy myself in the reward phase, then that'll motivate me more during the work phase to keep going. And then you probably hear this all the time, but take breaks, but I'm gonna go a little deeper into this because taking breaks is not the same for everyone, right? Taking breaks, it depends, like everyone has their own like attention span and how long that they can focus on a certain task before the performance starts to go down, right? And so let's see, Rain, how long would you say like you could study before like you start to feel like tired? Like in like one block?
Maybe like 90 minutes.
90 minutes? Okay, what about you, Justin?
3 hours.
Dang, okay. There's like a lot of variation sometimes, right? And so like maybe after 90 minutes, that's when Rain will take his break. But that doesn't mean that's when Justin should take his break, right? Like Justin could go for 3 hours, and then once his performance starts to go down, then he takes like a break to recharge, right? So that's an example, right? So you take your break when you feel like your performance is going to start to dip. So Rain, you're probably not going to schedule a study session longer than like 2.5 hours or 2 hours, So, yeah. All right. I love this meme, or this GIF, by the way. It's from Far From Home. But let's just recap what we went over so far, right? So there are external and there's internal distractions, right? And so we remember kind of what those are. External are things like your phone and other people. Internal are things like internal thoughts in your head that distracts you. We also learned how to remove or manage these distractions. We also learned how to improve your focus during lecture, right? Things like sitting near the professor, actively note-taking, handwriting your notes, things like that. How to improve focus while you're studying, right? Setting good goals for yourself, setting rewards for yourself, and that type of thing. Right? Ways to increase your motivation. And so before I end it, I just wanted to see if there's any questions at all, like any questions on like applying these to your life specifically, any questions from me, how I do things. Yes, Mark Vincent.
So you talk a lot about motivation, but what if like you need to study outside of like your motivation hours? Like what if it's like really at night and you have to end up getting through a lot of material? Like how would you go about doing that?
So a lot of that I think goes back to kind of time management and seeing what pockets of time you have throughout your day. So if you're like, so you could take a look at your schedule and see if you have pockets of time like during the day where you'd be able to work on it. Like even if it's just like for an hour, maybe you could squeeze in like an hour of deep work during that time, and then you could do the rest at night. I would say in terms of motivation in general, I would say like if you have to study outside of when you're usually motivated, to definitely pick a reward that you'd want to go for like at night, you know what I mean? So like if you have to study late at night, then maybe, and since it's late at night, you could be like, oh, tomorrow morning I'm gonna gym early, or I'm gonna make a breakfast early, or I'm gonna go get food in the morning, something like that to keep you going, because you know, basically because you're not gonna wanna do it if you're just doing it to do it. You're gonna do it if you know you're gonna get something in the end. So I think that's probably like a way you would do it during like hours where you don't feel very motivated. Yeah.
Okay, so I struggle with like doing work or studying at home, even if it's in my room alone, just because of outside noise, like my housemates might be doing on noise downstairs, or I just get distracted really easily. I don't like to listen to music while I study, so it's like I kind of like block out that noise. Do you have any tips on like locations I could go to that's easily accessible, or how to like deal with the lack of
Because basically like your environment's loud, but you don't really like listening to music.
No.
Yeah. So so I would say outside of your house, probably the best places are like if you went to like a cafe, or like if you went to the library. Those are probably the best places you can go. The only con is you'd have to drive here, but we don't live too far from Riverside, so if you know you're going to be here for like a good amount of time, then I think a drive to Orbach will be worth it, you know, especially if you're on the second floor because it's really quiet. So that's a good one. Yes, Ian.
How do you deal with like not distractions like your phone, because you know you can put these away, you know?
Right.
Them, but like distractions that you can't move, like every time I look at my bed, I just want to go on it.
Yeah. So that's a big one, right? And so, so first, like, I know you don't study in your bed, but like studying in your bed it's not good, right? Because the more comfortable you are, the more tired you're gonna get, right? So if I'm like studying in my bed, my blanket's on, I'm in like a hoodie, it's cold outside, like I'm gonna fall asleep, like, you know. But for that, I would say like something that helped me is like I used to like not make my bed, but I try to make my bed a lot now, because like when your bed is made, like it doesn't look like it wants to like eat you, you know? Because like when you like see the bed and like the blanket is moved for you and like there's a spot, there's like your dent in the bed, like it's gonna eat you, you know what I mean? So so I would say like making your bed, I'd say I think it's like that's a good point to bring up, because I think having like an organized workspace definitely helps keep like a clear mind, I would say. So yeah, I think making your bed would help, and then maybe if you're like tired, maybe if you were able to fix your sleep schedule, maybe that could help. If you feel like you need to sleep all the time, that could help. Maybe eating other things, or maybe caffeine, that could help. Yeah. Yes, Maggie.
I'd like to know, like, on your breaks, like, what are some activities you like to do?
Oh, I completely missed that part. Give me a sec. Yes, so for breaks, like, you remember like the distraction list? Like, let's say I'm using a distraction list, or let's say you're using a distraction list, and you came up with like a bunch of things that came to your mind. Like, sometimes I'll go through my distraction list and I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna just move my laundry from the washer to the dryer. I'm gonna refill my hydro. I'm gonna defrost my like chicken or something that I'm gonna cook for dinner. Things like that. I'll go through the distraction list because those are usually pretty quick things. So you could do some of those items. You could like, I don't know, some people like, you could watch TikToks. You could like scroll through Instagram. You could do like, you could like stretch a little bit. I know like sometimes like your neck or your back kind of gets a little stiff from like sitting all day. You could get more snacks, I'd say, like if that's something you like to eat during your study session. So basically you can do anything that you would enjoy like during your break period, I would say. The only thing with breaks that is risky is like, so usually like the ratio I like to go for is like for every hour that I'm working, I feel like the break should only be like 15 minutes or less. Cause like if you like work for an hour and then you're like on your phone for like 30 minutes and then that 30 minutes turns into like 45 minutes, then you're kind of like working and distracted like the same amount of time. So I would say like, to kind of follow a ratio kind of like that. So do something like that you could do like for like 15 minutes, I would say. Yes, Ian.
This is another bad question.
Yeah.
How do you feel about naps?
Naps? I know a lot of people like naps, but I personally never felt like I needed to take naps. But again, that's like up to, I don't know, that's like up to you and like how much sleep you usually get each night. But I think for me, I'm usually able to get like 7, maybe 8 hours of sleep on a good night. That's probably usually about 7 hours. And usually running on that and the food that I eat, I'm able to stay like pretty solid energy throughout the day. So probably like seeing like what you eat, see if that gives you enough energy. And yeah, like if you don't get it, like if you get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, then yeah, you're probably gonna need a nap. But yeah, good questions. Yes, Chris.
How do you allot your group study time versus alone study time? Because I could see like group study time sometimes be beneficial, sometimes be distracting.
Yeah, that's a really good question actually. So like in my first year, I was taking a bunch of science classes like Gen Chem, Bio, and like I know that I studied with a lot of my friends, and like a lot of the times like they would ask me for help with things, and so a lot of the times it was group work for me. But for exams, like I knew like, because like my learning style was I want to get to the point where I can learn something well enough to where I can teach it. And so to do that, I obviously need to study alone first. And so like before we review for an exam together with my group, I would like make sure I'm studying by myself, and I would make sure that I know the material well enough so that when I do go to the group study session, I could teach them it, or like I could like have enough knowledge to kind of like contribute, you know. So I would say like for big things like that, if you're more of a solo studier, I would do that before the group study. Yeah. Yes, Justin.
How do you find the motivation during the daytime or the day or even morning study? Because personally, I like studying from like 9 p.m. to like past midnight. It's kind of early.
Yeah, so and so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Everyone has like their own, I can't remember, I don't know if you've watched like the time management Kati course, but in that I basically talked about people have their high energy points in the day and people have their low energy points in the day. And so sometimes people are night owls, right? You've heard that expression before, like people like to get a lot of work done at night and it works for them. And so I don't think that you have to switch your lifestyle to become like a day person. I would say like if you feel like a lot more productive at night and you have more energy at the night, then I would play to your strengths there for sure. Yeah, that's what I would say. So you don't have to like fit like the stereotype of like, oh, I'm gonna wake up at like 4 a.m. and I'm gonna study, I'm gonna go to the gym, you know? Like if your hours are at night, then I would do that if that's working for you. Yeah. Yes. That's all good.
Oh. Do you have experience with like I guess, drinking energy drinks or drinking caffeine to prep for like a night or a day of studying? And what if these things like hit wearing off while you're still like in the middle of it and start to like fall off again?
Yeah, so like probably in my first or second year when like I had my life together somewhat, but like I don't know, like my time management was like okay, but it wasn't the best, and so I would end up having to squeeze in a lot of my study time. Like in finals week, I'd stay up a lot, and so in those days, obviously I'll need like an energy drink either at night or the next morning to get me through the next day. But like if I know I'm gonna have like a long day ahead, and I know that if I drink this energy drink, I'm gonna get a lot done, I'll take it, you know. And so that brings up another point of like, when you're trying to like form a habit or when you're trying to motivate yourself to do something, the thing that a lot of people should do is kind of like pair the thing that you want to do with the thing that you don't want to do, right? So like let's say you want to, or let's say you have to study, and let's say like you're like not feeling like studying, but you really like coffee. Then go to Starbucks, grab a coffee, and study, right? And that'll be like, okay, so this is pretty good. Like I'm studying, but at least I have my coffee. Or if you really like listening to, actually not, maybe not that, but like if you like snacking while you're studying, like let's say, like I like eating dried mangoes, and so let's say I really like dried mangoes, but I have to study or I have to write this paper that I really don't want to write. I'll be like, I'm gonna go grab dried mangoes. I'm gonna get them and I'll put them next to me and I'm gonna type my paper. So that I'm like, even though like this sucks, I got dried mangoes, you know what I mean? So I would say like, that's like a good thing, like pairing things you don't wanna do with things that you do wanna do. So yeah, I think that's a good tip. You know, anything else? Yes, Ian.
Personally, when I see like other people like studying, it motivates me to study with them. Is there a certain place I could join others like me in like studying?
Yeah, so so here in UCR Kati Kourses, we have things called matutor. It comes from the Tagalog word matuto, meaning to teach. So yeah. So you could go to brand tutors. No, but for real, like brand tutors, each week we have like reserved study rooms. So and we post about on the Instagram. So definitely come out to those if you want to just like find a chill place to study. Yes.
Yeah, so I work best like studying one-on-one, and I want to know like if I could get your number so we can study together, you know.
Maybe now is not the best time, but definitely find me afterwards, outside of Kati Kourses hours, and when we could exchange contact information.
Yeah, I'll hit you up.
Okay. Yes, Ian.
I'm currently failing in chemistry, so I was wondering if you could like work on that one-on-one.
Oh, so you wanna have some chemistry is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe at a later date. Maybe we can schedule something with Mark Vincent Wico over here. Yeah. Yeah. Have a study sesh. But yeah. Yeah. And then so moving on, like which of these strategies are you going to try? Like any of the ones that we went over, which ones, like you could just name one, like which one, like if you were to pick one, like which one would you want to try? Any raise of hands? Yes, Justin.
Setting realistic goals.
Realistic goals, yep, that's a good one. Like I have a tendency of making like, I'm gonna finish this paper by like Friday, but like that's kind of a tall task, you know? So maybe it's like, I'm gonna finish the intro paragraph today, I'm gonna finish the body paragraphs tomorrow, and then, you know, yes. Carla.
If I am studying or doing work at home, I will give my phone, my Switch, and all other electronics to my housemates so I don't know where it is. Because I'll be honest, today I did time management to where I'll play Animal Crossing during my lecture. And just because I didn't have time after my lecture to play.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good. Like a lot of people, like if you have like a close friend or like a housemate that that you could kind of be like accountability partners, like that's like something that's really good to have, and someone that can kind of hold you to your word, and you can really like, I don't know, you can really develop that way, like if you have that relationship with people. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the strategies I'm gonna try, so I'm a pretty shy guy, so in lecture this time I'm gonna go sit right in front of the professor.
Right in front.
So you can look at me.
Got you. Yes, Miggy.
I think I'm gonna try that distraction list because like I'm the kind of person where like I like sit down to study. I'm like, oh shit, I have to do this, and then while I'm doing that, I'm like, oh shit, I have to do this, and then I just never end up studying at all.
Yeah. I get that. So like, yeah, so that's why it saved me a lot, because I just have it there, and I'm like the type of person where things will just keep coming into my mind. Like I'll remember things at the randomest times. Like I'm like, shoot, like did I leave the stove on, or like, oh, did I put this in the fridge? You know? So like, I don't know. It's like just having that down, and then it just opens up a lot of my mind. That's how I'm able to like still handle those things afterwards. Yeah. Yes, Albert.
I'll probably try rewarding myself after finishing a task.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, for real. Like y'all don't like understand like how much it helps to plan beforehand like a reward that you're gonna have after your study session. Like it helps so much. And like, I don't know, sometimes like I'm just like, if I don't set a goal or a reward for myself, I'll just be sitting there and I'm like, I'm tired. But if I remember like, oh, I'm gonna get to go like hang out with my fam afterwards, and I won't have time to study later, then that'll help me like get motivated to finish that. But yeah. All right. So, but before you go, I just want to leave you with one last thing. Right? A lot of people say like things like, oh, I don't have the attention, or oh, I don't have the focus, right? People also say like, oh, like I don't have creativity, I don't have a good memory, I have a bad memory, right? I want you to like scratch all that and forget about that, because and people will say the same thing about focus, right? People say like, oh, I just don't have the focus. And so what I want to leave you with is that focus isn't something that you have, right? Think this in the same way, like being creative isn't something you have. Being creative is something that you do, right? So in the same way, focus isn't something you have. Focus is something that you do, right? And so what's the benefit from turning it from a have into a do, right? It's something that you can control now, right? It's something that's in your power. It's not a talent that you have or don't have. It's something that you have control over now. And when you have control over something, it means it's a skill that you can develop, right? It's a skill you can work on, and that means there are strategies out there for working on it, all right? And so there are strategies to like memorize things, right? Even if you feel like you don't have if you don't have a good memory, there are strategies to memorize things. But in the same way, there are strategies to help you focus on things, right? And so just remember, focus isn't something you have. Focus is something that you do. And so, yeah, go out there, use those strategies from today, stay focused, and I know all of you have it in you to do great in your classes. Yeah.